Zack Feinberg of the Revivalists. Thanks so much for being a part of the Working Songwriter Podcast, man. Your band is obviously most closely associated with the city of New Orleans, but both you and David Shaw, the creative forces behind the band, you're both transplants from different areas. You grew up in the New York City area. What kind of music were you growing up around in New York before you made your way down to New Orleans?
All kinds of stuff. I started playing guitar when I was 9 years old. My dad plays guitar and got me started pretty young and exposed me to blues music, and he just classic rock was always playing in the house. And I remember being really moved by music like when I was a little kid, even like Michael Jackson. And I remember like trying to figure out how to work the house like CD player, putting on Paul Simon's Rhythm of the Saints so I can hear the drum intro on Obvious Child over and over again when I'm like 3 or 4, like just like hoping it would come on. um, I have like early memories of that, of like music just being really powerful to me. Nirvana, when in first grade, I the first CD that like I went to the store and like asked to buy was In Utero
Yeah.
when I was that age. And yeah, it was always moving, like really like
We,
big for me.
I remember going to buy that record as well, and I believe it had like the 1990s Tipper Gore explicit lyrics sticker on the front of it, didn't it?
Yeah, it probably did the parental advisory thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember like trying to like, and to my mom's eternal credit, I explained it away. I'm like, look, mom, it's going to be all right. I have to have this album, and they went ahead and got it.
My
And
parents
it,
had zero like censorship for me, to the point that I was like, they probably should have. But like, yeah, I have very early memories, and one of them was learning what I was like, what is rape, when I'm like six,
right.
7, from the song "Rape Me,"
I
and
know.
yeah, so yeah,
I
that
mean,
that
looking
happened.
back now, I mean, it's kind of crazy, especially given, so he would have released that album in like 92 or something like that. And given what the national and cultural environment was, it's kind of crazy that he forced the hand of the record company to put out a song with the title "Rape Me."
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I wonder. I guess he could have done. He could do whatever he wanted at that point, right? They just did Nevermind. So who's gonna stop him?
Right, right. So you were connecting kind of with your dad's older stuff. He was kind of like a classic rock type of guy, and that's what he was playing as well.
Yeah, yeah. He's like he was. He's a baby boomer, and he's like a hippie, and he's a yeah, or was a hippie. Sort of like he's a lawyer, so you can't really say he's a hippie, but uh, he was he's into that sort of culture, and he's definitely been like a lifelong music fan, and still concert goer. Um, yeah, like classic rock, southern rock, Allman Brothers type stuff. And then he was a fan of the Dead, and he had, like, him and his buddies would come over and play guitar, and I'd play with them. My older brother is a musician.
Did you take to it pretty fast? Were you pretty good at guitar, like straight off, or did it take some real woodshedding for you to get to get
I,
across?
I was a little kid, and like I remember like the first lesson I didn't get, like I got frustrated and I gave up because like I couldn't get my fingers to like hold the chords down and stuff. But the fact that there was like guitars just laying around in the house, I would keep coming back with it and just sort of messing around with it, and then eventually it clicked. And I did take off. I got pretty good pretty quick. Like I remember like I went in for a first guitar lesson, and the guitar instructor was like really impressed, and like
Hmm.
brought in like another instructor, like, oh, check out this kid playing Johnny Be Good. He's like 9. It's great, sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So I feel like music is like that. It's like it's a language. So if it's spoken in the house, it's very likely that the children are gonna learn it.
Yes, yes, but also certain kids take off on certain things, and I think obviously like stick-to-itiveness is important when you're a kid to learn something. But I also think early on for kids, it's like you got to find that one thing that you are pretty good at when you get started at it, because you need that positive feedback loop
That was big for me. It
early.
really was, man. It was. It was to just to have that, to know that like growing up, that I had like something special that was mine. That was valuable for sure for me. Did
So
you feel
even
that
at
way
that
too?
age. Yes, I did. I tried a lot of different things and I was like really mediocre at a lot of different things. And then when I would sit down and play guitar, people would kind of like listen to it. Even when I was pretty young, 12 and 13 years old. And it
Yeah.
was like, huh, that's different.
Yeah.
You notice that as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be like, you get kind of discouraged about like not making a sports team or something, and then you'd be like,
Right.
I'm better at guitar than all these motherfuckers or something.
That's it. Yeah, for me, it was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Everyone hit puberty except for me. Okay, I'm
That
gonna
too.
have to find my, I'm gonna have to find my way around this, and definitely the guitar was it. I hope my kids, I hope what they find that in is like day trading or stock
Yeah.
trading.
Yeah.
Uh, so did you start to conceptualize at this time, like even at that young age, like, hey, I might like go this direction. Like maybe I want to spend a life in music, or was it a little bit more casual than that at first?
It was sort of yeah, I also have a very specific memory where I realized like this was something I wanted to pursue, and that I sort of like kept it secret for a very long time because I didn't want to be so bold as to say that I'm gonna be like a musician, because you hear about how hard it is to do.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember I must have been like 12 or 11 or 12, and like I was on a bus listening to my CD player, Best of Sting and the Police, and just like transported, just like absolutely moved by the music and loving it. And I just remember thinking like, yeah, I want to be like a senator probably, or president, but like I think I want to do this. This is really cool. Yeah. So that
How
was my
did you
little.
how did you make your way down to how did you end up in New Orleans of
I
all
went
places?
to I went to Tulane University,
Okay.
and I applied there because was aware that there was like you could play out in New Orleans. I remember I did a summer program at Berklee College of Music my junior year of high school, and one of the instructors was saying like in New Orleans there's gigs, like you can get gigs.
Yeah.
Um, in a city like Boston, for example, it's very hard to get gigs because there's the entire Berklee College of Music. There's a ton of musicians. There's a whole faculty. Um, there's not that many like live music venues, so it's like oversaturated. And he made the point, like, yeah, New Orleans is like a ton of clubs. You can just go play out pretty easily. So I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. I'd never been.
Hmm.
And it's a interesting, very different city.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful place. It's got so many awful problems,
Sure.
um,
Sure.
but it's
Well, was
home.
he
It's home
right?
now. Yeah.
Was this professor right? Like, did you move down there and it was like, damn, there are gigs. I can go make
It,
$100 playing for three
well,
hours in a band somewhere.
sort of. The other confounding variable was my move-in weekend was Hurricane Katrina, so that
Oh,
threw off everything for a couple months, and the rebuilding of the city was another sort of traumatic situation. But I ended up meeting our lead singer Dave
mhm.
um, in August 2007, and I had only really moved down there in January '06. So pretty quickly we started playing out, and it's amazing that like we're still doing it. That was the beginning of the same journey that I'm on professionally.
Man, that's pretty auspicious to meet someone and have like so for me, I'm able to continue doing the same thing because it's like a solo thing. So what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like, break up with myself or fire? But the fact that you would find a creative partnership like that and you guys are still like just not only going strong, but it seems like hitting your stride like 15 years in. I mean, that's really
Thanks.
auspicious, man. It's a beautiful thing. It's a providential thing.
It's really cool, and it's also been like there's 8 of us in the band, and it's we added one drummer, one of we have two drummers, drummer slash percussionist, and we added him in 2017. Everybody else has been there since 2010, so it's really a close knit. Like it's a family. It's like a it's we're I'm very appreciative of it.
Man, that's well, okay. We're going to get a little ahead of ourselves here
Mhm.
because you've kind of brought up here something that I do want to dig in on, and we might as well dig in on it now because you brought it up. You're an eight-piece band,
Hmm.
okay? It's so difficult to make decisions as a group. It's so difficult to keep that amount of people in work. I mean, even if the shows are going great and you're making a bunch of money, you got to keep people in work. People want to work different amounts because people start having different family situations,
Yeah.
different home situations. How, what is the organizing principle that allows you guys to navigate such a narrow road that you have to walk?
I guess it would be that we all really believe in what we're doing and are passionate about it and love doing it. And every point that you've just made that's something to navigate is something that we have to navigate. Um, but we all believe that it's worth it. And like we went through doing it ourselves for years, in a van and loading in and out, and it's exhausting, and it's something you can you can make work in at least that we did in our 20s. And we've grown it enough to a point where we have a crew that, so we're not, it's but yeah, like people don't want to tour as much than others, and that's just, it is what it is. You can't force somebody to do something. um and there's just solutions. I mean, our sax player missed some shows recently because he had some family obligations, and we had a sub. That's liberating also to know that, if you need it, you could have a sub. We all took paternity leaves. I only missed like 3 shows in my entire time um,
Mhm,
in the band, and I had a sub. Really, the only guy that we can't sub out for is our singer.
mhm. Wow, that's a cool way. That's a cool way of looking. That's like a relaxed way and a very non-dramatic way of looking at it. I mean, that's cool, man. That everyone kind of gets down with that.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, you have to be chill about it, I guess, for it to work.
Yeah. So when you guys were getting started, like, is there just like a plethora of club gigs? They're like, yeah, well, we got to sell booze all night long, so come on in with your project of original songs and play tunes tonight, or how did that work? How did you guys get it off the ground?
Yeah, that was one of the things, like in our formative years, that was a conscious decision to not be a cover band, because
Yeah.
during that phase where like you could do better by being a cover band and like get paid better, but
Hmm.
we're like, no, we're an original band, and like we just had to be firm that like this is what we're establishing ourselves as. And we were lucky enough to generate a little bit of a buzz, at first in like the college scene, and then extended out into the greater city. And one of the other formative experiences was we would play at like this like cheesy beach bar in Pensacola, Florida, called Bamboo Willie's, and we would have to do like, I think it was like 3 hours. It would be like 3 sets, and we would do it all weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that was sort of like our Beatles in Hamburg type uh,
Yeah.
teeth cutting experience.
Bamboo Willies. Can't make
Yeah,
that up. Can you?
yeah,
So you guys, you make this decision early on of like, we're going to write our own stuff like this. We're an original band. We want to go this direction. Did you and David start writing together at this point, or are you both writing individual songs and bringing them in separately? Like, how did that creative process begin to iterate?
the day that we met, he showed me he showed me Soul Fight, which was the first song that he ever wrote by himself, and it's like our second or third most popular song. It's on our
Wow.
first EP. Yeah, it's a great song. Um, like we were just playing each other's songs, that because we both write songs, and like the day we met, we just like, he was sitting on his porch singing, and I was riding my bike by, and I recognized that this is an original song. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna stop and listen. And then he had just moved down and was looking for somebody to play with, and so it just worked out perfectly. He showed me Soul Fight, I showed him Concrete, and those songs are both on our first EP. So we'd both been writing individually, and started, writing more together, and or just bringing in ideas together. We write together some, and we write individually. It's all of the above.
What did you have to do the times that you guys were writing together? What kind of skills did you have to learn to do that effectively to kind of to collaborate and write a song together. I've never had a mind to be able to do that, but it's
It's
something that I
hard.
wish that I was able
Yeah.
to do. So yeah, I'm interested. Like, was there anything you had to give up to do that? Was there something that
Yeah.
you had to?
I feel like we
What's the
got only we. I feel like we only are really hitting our stride, honestly, with the collaborative co-writing. I mean, we've written really good ones in the past. So actually, maybe let me revise that statement.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes it's like there's a little bit of a push and pull if one of us wants to take it in one direction and versus the other one, and that it's not like every session that we get together is fruitful. Um, a song like It Was a Sin. It's like I had a bunch of the start of it, and then he just like threw in like just like without even talking about it at all. Like he just did it in a rehearsal, like some perfect parts, and so there was just like no discussion about it at all, and that's like one of the better ones that we co-wrote, I think. Um, and sometimes we have to put in a lot of elbow grease. Like, and I think the ability to do that for me comes with us being comfortable with each other and knowing our strengths and weaknesses and working it's almost better if the idea is less fully formed when you come in together because there's no expectations and you
Mhm.
and sort of arrive at it together, which was what Kid was um for us, and that's one that I'm proud of.
It's interesting just from the way that your relationship literally began, where you heard him playing his song and you liked it, and then you played that song Concrete for him and he liked it. It almost sounds like you guys are able to collaborate so effectively with one another because you just on a baseline level and from like moment one, you guys both just kind of admire one another and kind of admire the work of the other person.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's
You
a
know,
lot of love.
yeah, yeah. It's an easy way to connect. It seems to me like so you kind of described that as you called it your Beatles and Hamburg moment as you're working at Bamboo Willie's in
Hmm.
Pensacola. You're building a name in New Orleans. I had started to hear the name of your band around this time, sometime between 2010 and 2014. But I'm like kind of like a plugged in music guy. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
ear to the rail. I kind of starting to hear about it. It seems to me like there's this really big dividing line though with your band where it went from that, like you're building something and it's cool. Then you put out this record called Men Amongst Mountains. And that seemed to me like where it really things sort of started to like solidify for you guys and you really kind of took to the national stage. Am I right that that's
You're
kind of really what
100%
broke
right.
through?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were building a grassroots sort of like live following up until really 2016, 17. Men Amongst
Okay.
Mountains came out in 15, and it wasn't the album that did it. It was the song "Wish I Knew You," which was the second single. And the first single was "Keep Going," and it like had a little bit of radio play. I think it got to like 18 or 22 or something on the adult alternative chart, which is it's already a niche like radio market.
Right.
So it's not a huge deal. But we we did switch managers for the second single. Um, it, we had "Wish I Knew You" queued up, and it took off. It went to number one on that chart. It went to number one on the alternative radio chart, which is a much bigger one, and then it went to an even bigger one, like which is called Hot AC, which is basically like a pop chart, and it charted there, and it exposed us to a whole bunch of people, like just a ton of radio play, and that is really when we started selling more tickets, so it added fuel to the fire, um, and sort of, yeah, you're right. That's when that happened.
Is there, I love moments like this in a band's arc because they pretty much only happen, one time. And it always reminds me of like that movie, That Thing You Do, like when stuff starts to take off. And I
Yeah,
love it. Like, do you remember a specific moment? Was there a specific moment when you realized, wow, things are going to be different now? because of this? Like, was there a specific show or a specific meeting, or you noticed something where you really felt like things had changed?
Um, Honestly, not really, because it still was very incremental, like our growth over all the years before it. Like we were selling out like 930 Club, for example,
Hmm.
before that came out. So we had enough exposure that the things that started happening didn't seem like so jarring or jolting. Like it
Yes.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
like we were meeting Ellen, and my heart is racing and stuff like that, and it's all very fun, but it's like we were kind of acclimated a little bit, I would say, um, to
You
to
know,
to the
that
stages. Yeah,
that's a good thing because I'm
yeah,
sure you've seen this a million times. I've certainly seen it a million times. Sometimes artists get their lightning strike
yeah,
moment too early, and so a bunch of
hmm,
people come out to see them, and they don't have a live show that can back it up. They don't have
yeah.
any of the skills to like kind of retain these people. But it sounds like when it happened for you guys, it was like, yeah, we know how to put on a big club show to, 1,500 people and bring down the house. Like it happened at almost like a perfect time. It seemed.
That's exactly right. And honestly, like the whole I most of the band members and myself included, I feel like we sort of met the whole radio success thing with sort of a shrug of the shoulders. Like the radio guys would be like super excited, like, oh, so and so station is adding it. We'd be like, cool. Like, all right, I don't know, we don't really know what that means, but great. But we'd
Yeah.
see like how excited they were about it. And I mean, we put in the work too, because it's like to
Yeah.
do like a radio campaign, you got to go to all these stations constantly and play,
Yeah.
and we're just happy to do it. Is the other thing.
I kind of love that, like
Yeah,
that, uh, the idea that they'd be like, no, no, this is a big deal. It just got added. And you're just there in your van being like, well, great, man. We're just hoping that we sell the last 100 tickets to Irving
yeah.
Plaza
Like,
tonight.
does that mean anything? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like whatever, man. We're hoping that our bonus is a little bit bigger tonight. That's how is it affected? Okay, so that tune, obviously, if it was the second single, then there was some part of you that didn't realize that that was the tune that was going
I
on,
did. I
right?
I own that. I did not realize it. I didn't connect with that
Okay.
one.
So
Yeah,
how does that affect you now creatively as you're working on things?
it affected me more on the last record, if I'm being honest with you, in that it sort of shook me in the sense like okay, this is a song that David wrote by himself. I didn't see its potential at all. Um,
Hmm.
and I think it made me have a more hands-off approach on the following record. And then I was like, I'm gonna let him, because we had this massive success by
Hmm.
me not messing with it at all on that. Like,
Hmm.
so I sort of stepped aside a little bit on I would say on the follow up, if I'm being
Hmm.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah, but still leaning into your own tunes is what did it affect the way that you work on your own tunes at all?
Um, I maybe I had a little bit of a confidence loss if I'm thinking about it, because I didn't have a song that was like really mine on that record. On this one I have a bunch. But and maybe I wasn't advocating though for them really as much either,
Sure.
because of that. There were like I had ones that I was pitching, but I wasn't gonna like I didn't feel confident being like, no, we gotta do my song, or something.
Hmm.
I was like maybe more just in the mindset of like I have to be a supportive, um, like a guitar player on this one, you know.
Man, I think it's really cool that you can kind of step back and talk about this so casually in a way of like, yeah, well, I had a confidence loss, so I had to learn how to deal with that and still be an effective member of the band. Like, is that something you had to learn how to do, or has that always been kind of a part of your character that you're able to take stuff with such equanimity in a way?
Um, I think it was something that I was dealing with at the time that was, not easy for me, but I'm generally like I try to be a mellow person,
Hmm.
and just meet all kinds of issues with a calm coming from a calm place, because it's easier for me to navigate it that way than being on the verge of a panic.
Fair enough. It
Yeah.
is funny, the song of mine that is still the most listened to is from my first record, and I can remember when I wrote it, I genuinely thought, I'm like, well, I like this, but I don't think anyone else is gonna like this. And
Yeah.
then you have those other tunes that you're writing, and you're like, here we go, baby. This is I got Smells Like Teen Spirit #2 right here
And then it
queued up
doesn't.
for everyone.
Yeah. I've had all those experiences too. Yeah.
Dude, you play it for like your own mom, and even your own mom is just like, yeah, it was okay. It's like,
And
come
that's
on, mom.
I feel like music is really humbling in that way. Like um I like you see somebody accepting like a Grammy award or whatever, and they're always like, "Oh, I'm so humbled." It's like, no, you're not. You're honored. That's not humbled.
Right.
Humbled is like playing your song to like your bandmates or an audience, and like it's not connecting. That's humble. That's actually humbling. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or listening back
100%.
to yourself and realizing that you're sounding awful, and like,
Yes.
you just have to have that honesty with yourself, and to admit that, okay, this isn't working. Like, let me work on improving this. Yeah,
It's so humbling because so
yeah,
I'm working on an album process right now, and I spent earlier this year, the month of January, I've never done this before. I spent a month working on one song because I was so convinced that it was like a masterpiece. I'm talking about the writing of the lyrics,
yeah.
the recording of it.
That's
I
great.
spent so much money bringing in different
Th-
musicians. I did a couple different mixes. Brother, I had like there was a lot of time and money invested in this song, and then I played it for the people that are close to me, and it just laid a big goose egg. Like it
Really,
didn't move anyone in any way.
what's the song?
And it's well, it hasn't been released. It's
Okay.
just yeah. So it but and it's just staggering. And then but then the other side of the coin, and I'm sure you felt this too. I in an afternoon I kind of compose a song really quickly. I record it in the moment and just get it together really quickly.
Yeah,
And then you play it for someone and they're like, "Man, that's the best song I've heard of yours in like 7 years." You're like, what?
yeah. It's just like sort of like something that in the moment like flows. It connects sometimes, and it's
Yes.
almost like you need to be patient sometimes in the recording process to allow that to happen, to get it to the song that you spend hours and hours on. You might need to just recut it. Unfortunately, I don't know. I haven't because I haven't heard it. But
Yep.
also, like, that's a great way. This the stick with itness is like what I need to do more, honestly, of with my
Yep.
songwriting. And Dave and I did that with Kid. I did that with the production of Kid. I was sure that it was something was there, and it has connected. I think,
Yes.
and like
Yeah.
I read like the Leonard Cohen biography, and I read about how he would fill up pages with alternate verses for stuff, and we sort of had that approach on the writing of that one, just so there's a
Really?
yeah.
Wow. What was
um
that like? That's a lot of work.
it was like I would just get the cadence of the chorus or of it in my head, and just like I wanted it to be as best as possible, and so I'd be walking around or something, and then another end of a chorus would come in my head, and on that song we have the choruses, all three choruses start the same way, but they end differently just because we had options, and that's not
Yeah.
a typically recommended way of songwriting, is having your chorus not repeat, but whatever.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that, man.
Yeah,
Plenty of Springsteen songs that do that. Plenty of Tom Waits songs that do that that I love. So yeah, that's right. So, but there was a record between your kind of breakout one and your latest Pour It Out Into
yeah.
the Night. So
Take
you
good
did
care. Yeah,
Take Good Care. Yeah, talk to me about that one. I've always thought that was really interesting because you guys worked with several different producers to get that one done. I know Dave Cobb worked on some of it, and
yeah.
who else were you with on that one?
So Dave Bassett did two tracks on that, and that's
Hmm.
because our singer David Shaw wrote "All My Friends" with Dave Bassett, and he was like, "Well, I want
Okay.
him to produce it." And then we also worked with a producer by the name of Andrew Dawson, who
Okay.
he's really good. He's done a lot of work like in the hip hop world. He's worked with Kanye for years, before, most recently when he famously like has had his mental
Went.
health issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but Yeah, they were all like I enjoyed working with all of them. Um, and I think at that point it was like we had our breakthrough, and it was like kind of like we just wanted to try working with different people. And we did our previous two albums with like a friend, or our Ben Elman, who's a local musician that we were really comfortable with. So maybe we were a little uncomfortable committing to do a full record with somebody new.
Yeah.
So we just kind of did piecemeal. And
Well, what I thought about, I always just assumed, I was like, well, look, they got a break, and now they're like, they want to learn a bunch of shit from
it's
you.
that too.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
we got the budget to do it now, and we have
yeah.
the profile to do it now. So like, come work with us, man. We want to learn how. So what were some of the things that you were learning from those different folks that you were working with at that point?
I learned a ton from watching Dave Cobb work. He was very quick, um, and very nonchalant. Like he would just have like I think he would listen to our song. He's got huge ears, and he would like have his phone out, like he had a voice memo. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah," and he'd have like a melody. He was like, "This song needs this section," and it's like a melody line, and it worked really well. He did that a couple times. Um, and he's really good at like having like parts that the whole band plays to sort of connect sections of a song. And the other really cool thing that he would do is he's just got a really great like basic um rhythm sense that locks everybody in. I don't know how to describe it, but like he could play shaker.
Mm,
And it's just the simplest part, but it's just like so in there. And it's the same thing on an acoustic guitar. He's not like a great guitar player by any stretch, but he's a truly great rhythm guitar player. It's
yep.
just like straight sixteenths or something in a way that like is so good. I can't like, and it's just from
Yeah.
being in the studio so much, I think. And he's just got a cool aesthetic. I like his just sort of his like vintage sensibility. It's pretty cool.
It's funny that you would mention that ability to stitch things together with rhythm, because one of the things I've noticed is how much, even in just the mix of a song, if a rhythmic element is mixed too much in a certain
Hmm.
place, it can make it sound like the whole thing is off. But if it's down, it's amazing. My point is, it's amazing how much something like a shaker mixed in the right place, played at the right part of the beat, can
Oh
make the
yeah,
whole band just swing in a certain way or completely
yeah.
pocket in a certain way. It's
Or
beautiful.
give the lift, or give it a dynamic lift that's needed. Yeah, and mixing is such a monster with our band of eight, and then with more layers on the records. It is, we spend a lot of time getting it right, and I'm very
Yeah.
particular about that kind of thing too. And it's actually like I find it difficult to listen back to concerts because it's like it's not like how I want it to be, and it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's tough.
There's a story I read once about kind of along these lines of getting the mix right with a rhythm, and it was Petty working on Refugee, and obviously Stan Lynch playing drums in the Heartbreakers at that time. But I guess Jim Keltner was working one studio over, and it didn't have that lift that you were talking about. So apparently, much to Stan Lynch's like chagrin, they bring in Keltner to play Shaker on it, and it like completely lifts the song. So now I went back after reading this story, and I'd never really heard the Shaker and Refugee before,
I'm
and
gonna
I
have to check it
listened to the
out.
song.
Yeah,
You will not believe how jacked in the mix it is.
that's
It's
hilarious.
crazy. Yes, and it like makes the song. It completely lifts it in that way.
That's so cool. I'm a huge Tom Petty and Heartbreakers fan. Mike Campbell is also one of my favorite guitar players. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I read his biography, and I watched like the 5 hour long documentary too.
I've watched Running Down a Dream an
Yeah.
embarrassing amount of times. Um,
Okay.
what did you kind of take from it, one of those producers? I believe you said it was Andrew Dawson. He kind of worked in like the hip hop and pop world a little bit more. What were kind of some of the working techniques that you've taken from him and still incorporate now?
He had a lot of like nifty like software sort of tricks. And
Hmm,
he was I can't say that I like effectively incorporate that stuff. He was just easy to work with, and like one of the guys.
yeah,
And um, I'm trying to think. Like he did some cool stuff like with sound manipulation. Like one of the things I remember he did like to make like to beef up like a drum sound, like he would not do like a drum trigger like on it, but he'll like add like the not the attack, but like the tail of like a drum
Mhm.
of like a big drum sound onto something. And he had a bunch of cool like sub bass tricks and stuff that he would do.
Yeah. It's it's really neat to see what a variance there can be between producers because you're talking about Dave Cobb, who's kind of like this old school. We're going to get the band together and kind of do an arrangement
In the live room kind of thing. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
live room, and then there's another producer who's just like, "Hey, man, guess what? I'm kind of a technical whiz, and I'm going to make this song that sounded pretty good 10 minutes ago sound like a single," And it's
Yeah.
cool to see that there's still different ways to skin a cat with recorded music.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And
Talk to
that's
me
the fun
about, so
thing.
how did you
Sorry.
skin the cat? No, no, go ahead.
I don't you go ahead. It's over. The cat is skinned.
Okay. The cat is skinned. Okay,
Yeah.
so this you have just recently skinned a cat with this new record, Poured Out Into the Night. You just released it. Congratulations on getting it out into the world.
Thank you.
How long did it take to make this one? Was this an easy record to make? Was this a more difficult record to make? What was your experience with this one as compared to the others?
Honestly, this is like my favorite recording experience that we've done.
Really?
Yeah, we really took our time with it. We worked with this guy, Rich Costi, and he's fantastic engineer, a producer. He's like worked on a lot of like big rock albums, engineered the Rage Against the Machine albums back in the day with Rick Rubin, and he the Audio Slave stuff, and he produced one of the big Muse records.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah. So he's like a pretty top notch engineer. Like he does a lot of mixing and engineering. So he really spends kind of a crazy amount of time setting up sounds. And we did 2 weeks at this as like a retreat in this studio in Vermont. Um, Great studio called Guilford Sound, and we had tape machines, and like we would spend hours. He would spend hours getting set up every day before we would ever start playing. And we would just record it as many times as we needed to live, and then we'd be messing with the arrangement. Um, I was also inspired by watching the Beatles Get Back documentary, seeing how much like live shedding that they do, and all of the like little conversations over arrangement, um, and seeing them shaping it. And it's like, yeah, you just have to put in the time and have the conversations and be detail oriented, and then get it there. And we
And
were
kind of
all,
keep the faith. Yeah, because
yeah,
it kind of amazed me with that documentary.
yeah,
And I think you notice it in your own work as well. It's like how bad something can be sounding like 3 seconds before it starts sounding good. I
hmm,
guess by definition, that's how something
yeah.
goes from bad to good. But you'd think that it would be more of like a gradual process, whereas like it's not. It's kind of boring. When are we going to take lunch
And then
into?
it comes together. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so it was like that sometimes. Like we're not getting it there, and then we'll be listening back, and I'll be like, okay, actually, let's try slowing this down. And even though we just spent hours and hours on one tempo, you slow it down, and it's, yeah, I think I like that better. You know,
yeah.
so we did 2 weeks there, and then we did a whole bunch of overdubbing at various points in New Orleans. Um,
Nice,
yeah, and we
nice,
spent
man.
a ton of time like preparing for this record too. We started with an enormous batch of material that we whittled down.
That seems to be the way to go in general. Just being able to, I
Yeah.
don't know about you, man, but okay, so if my batting average is about 300 with songs, pretty much like most of my misses are at the beginning. And like once I get a hit or two for a project,
Hmm.
then I start to know what the rest of the songs sound like. So basically my batting average is like 100 at the start of a project, and by the time I get to the end of the project, I'm batting like 500. At the end, do you find that at all that you start to zero in on the songs a little bit as you get closer?
Um, I've never done like a project where it's like I'm completely driving the ship like that. So I don't know if it feels like that exactly. It's usually well, like if the song by itself, I believe it's there, then I know it's gonna work. And when like the recording process is more of like the navigating the arrangement and how to approach it. Um, but like we spend a ton of time in pre-production where there's a lot of misses, and it's like
Uh,
we can go in and like somebody will bring a song, and it's like we're gonna work on this song today, and we're all kind of looking around like this is not this is not going to be one of the ones, but you sort of go through with it, just
yeah.
you know, yeah.
Takes a lot of those days to get to the good ones, man. Well, are you guys touring like crazy behind this one,
We're
or are you
about
doing it?
yeah. I'm flying out on 2 days. Yeah, we're touring pretty much all summer.
Oh, right on, man.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's I've been listening to the music for a while. Like I said, I've been aware of you guys for a long time, even before you broke, and it's a pleasure to talk to you, man. Thanks for coming on the show and talking about your creative process.
Likewise, and it's really cool to hear that you like our band and care about it, and I've enjoyed and connected with your music very much. Like I said before we started recording, I'd let you know that I saw on the calendar that you were the host of this podcast. I was like, what? That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. This podcast is my Trojan horse to get my music to people, and I also love doing it. I just love catching up with people in our
Are
little
you?
world that
Do you ever play in New Orleans?
never. I played One Eyed Jacks
Huh?
years ago, and then oh, there was a little bar I played. No, but I haven't been down in a while. Maybe I'll get down there. I'll look you up if I
That'd be
do.
cool. Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Are you guys coming through DC to play?
Yes. Well, we're at Merriweather
Ooh,
Post
Merriweather.
Pavilion with
Okay.
Head in the Heart. Yeah,
Oh,
a
nice,
couple
nice.
weeks.
I played with them years ago. Okay, I'm gonna look up that show. Well, here I'm gonna first of all I'm gonna say bye to our recording here. So I'll
All
stop
right.
recording.